I never thought I'd wake up to chainsaws in my front yard. The sound was sharp, vicious, like something tearing apart my childhood. I threw on my slippers, rushed outside, and there they were, 3 men in neon vests, revving chainsaws, standing under the massive oak tree that's been in my family for 4 generations. "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" I shouted, my voice cracking with panic. One of them, a tall guy with a clipboard, turned to me with a bored expression. "Work order from the HOA. This tree's coming down today." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. That tree wasn't just wood and leaves. My grandfather planted it the day my father was born. My father built a swing on its lowest branch for me when I was 5. My wife and I carved our initials in its bark the year we got married. It wasn't just a tree, it was the last living piece of my family's history. "There's nothing wrong with this tree," I yelled, walking toward them. "It's healthy. You can't just show up and cut it down without my permission." Clipboard man shrugged. "HOA voted last week. It's a safety risk. Roots are damaging the sidewalk. Liability issue." I could feel my chest getting tight. This wasn't about safety. This was about control. The HOA had been after me for months about yard violations. My mailbox was 2 inches too tall, my grass was too native, and last Christmas they fined me for using non-approved lights. But this was war. "Turn those saws off," I said, stepping between them and the tree. "If you so much as scratch this bark, I'm calling the sheriff." They hesitated, muttered something into their radios, then backed off. "Fine, but you'll be hearing from the board." But I wanted to hear from them. That night, I dug out every HOA newsletter, rulebook, and bylaw I had. I stayed up past midnight with a pot of coffee, highlighting every section about common property, easements, and landscaping. I wasn't just going to stop them, I was going to embarrass them in front of the whole neighborhood. The next day, I marched into the HOA office. The board president, Linda, sat behind a long table with her usual fake smile. "Mr. Harris, we've been expecting you," she said, almost sweetly. "You can drop the act, Linda," I said, slamming the notice they'd posted on my door. "You can't cut down my tree. This isn't common property. This tree is on my deeded lot, planted decades before this HOA even existed." Linda's smile tightened. "We have a responsibility to maintain safety standards. Our arborist determined the root system is a tripping hazard. The vote was unanimous." I leaned closer. "Then your arborist is either incompetent or on your payroll. I had my own arborist check it this morning. Roots are fine. Sidewalk is fine. You lied." For a moment I saw it, the flicker of panic in her eyes. And that's when I knew this was bigger than just my tree. Wait until you see what I discovered next. It turns out my HOA wasn't just trying to take my tree, they were running a scam that affected the whole neighborhood. Keep watching, because what happens at the next HOA meeting will blow your mind. That night I went digging deeper. Public records, county permits, tree removal contracts. And what I found made my blood boil. The same tree cutting company had been paid tens of thousands of dollars by the HOA in the past year, way more than they should have. Perfectly healthy trees were being marked as hazards and removed all over the neighborhood. I even found an invoice for $8,500, signed by Linda herself, for cutting down a single magnolia tree down the street. This wasn't about safety. This was a racket, a kickback scheme. The next morning, I printed everything. Every invoice, every meeting note, every payment authorization. And I made copies. Because if Linda wanted a fight, she was about to get one. I called every neighbor who had lost a tree in the past year. Mrs. Callahan cried when I told her what I'd found. "That magnolia was older than me," she said. "I thought they had no choice but to cut it." "They did," I said grimly. "And we're going to make them pay for it." I could feel the neighborhood waking up. One by one, people began to take my side. By the time the next HOA meeting rolled around, I had an army. And I was ready to drop a bomb that would shake the board to its core. The night of the HOA meeting, the community hall was packed tighter than I'd ever seen. Normally, only a handful of people showed up, mostly retirees who wanted to complain about dog poop on sidewalks or kids riding skateboards. But tonight, every chair was taken. People were standing along the walls. I could feel the energy in the room, angry, buzzing, electric. Linda sat at the front table with the rest of the board, looking calm, but her smile was stretched too thin. She knew why everyone was here. "Good evening, neighbors," she said, tapping her gavel. "Let's begin tonight's meeting with the usual updates." "Skip the updates," a man shouted from the back. "Tell us why you've been cutting down our trees." Murmurs erupted across the room. Linda tried to keep her composure. "We follow the recommendations of our certified arborist. All removals are for the safety of the community." That was my cue. I stood, holding up a thick folder. "Funny," I said loudly, "because my arborist says my tree is perfectly healthy. And according to these," I slapped the folder on the table, "you've been paying thousands of dollars to the same company to remove perfectly good trees all over this neighborhood." The room went silent. Linda blinked. "Mr. Harris, this is not the appropriate forum to—" "Oh, it's the perfect forum," I cut her off. "These people pay dues every month, and they deserve to know where their money is going." I opened the folder and began passing copies down the rows. "These are the invoices I pulled from county records. Look at this one. $8,000 to remove a single magnolia tree on Maple Drive. Here's another, $10,000 for 3 pines on Birch Court. And here's the kicker. I held up the last page. This one is for my tree, scheduled for removal at nearly $5,000. A tree that doesn't even need to be removed." Gasps and angry whispers spread through the crowd. "This is outrageous," someone shouted. "They cut down my dogwood for no reason," another neighbor cried. Linda was losing control of the room. "Everyone, please remain calm." The board acted in good faith. "No," I said, stepping closer to her table. "You acted for profit. These invoices have your signature on them, Linda. So either you've been getting kickbacks, or you're the most incompetent president this HOA has ever had. Which is it?" The room erupted. People were standing now, shouting questions, demanding answers. For the first time, Linda's mask slipped. "I don't have to explain myself to you," she snapped. "Yes, you do." Mrs. Callahan stood up, her voice trembling with anger. "That magnolia was my husband's favorite tree. You had no right." Others joined in. "We want a vote. Audit the books. Fire the board." Linda banged her gavel over and over, but no one was listening. The power had shifted. The board's treasurer, an older man with gray hair, finally spoke. "I didn't sign off on these payments," he admitted. "I thought we had 3 bids before we approved any contract." Linda glared at him, but it was too late. The crowd smelled blood. "This is fraud," I said. "You've been misusing HOA funds. And if you don't step down tonight, we'll take this to the county. I'm sure the local news would love to run a story about a corrupt HOA president." Linda's face turned red. She whispered something to the secretary, then stood. "Fine," she said through gritted teeth. "We'll schedule a vote for a new board at next month's meeting." "Not good enough," I said. "We want an emergency vote. Tonight." The neighbors roared their approval. Linda looked around the room, saw she was outnumbered, and finally nodded. "Fine. Tonight." We passed out slips of paper and pens. People lined up to cast their votes, whispering to each other, shaking their heads. When the counting was done, it wasn't even close. The entire board, except for the treasurer, was voted out. Linda gathered her things, her face pale. She didn't look at me as she walked out. But I wasn't done yet. After the meeting, a group of us stayed behind. "We can't just elect a new board and pretend this never happened," I said. "We need to get our money back." The treasurer nodded. "We can request a full financial audit. If funds were misused, we can sue to recover them." It felt good. No, it felt righteous, to see justice finally within reach. But I also knew Linda wouldn't go quietly. She'd been running this HOA like her personal kingdom for years. People like her don't just walk away. That night, I went home and sat under my oak tree. The moonlight spilled through its branches, casting long shadows across the yard. For the first time in weeks, I let myself breathe. But my phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. Enjoy the tree while you can. Accidents happen. I froze. This wasn't over. I stared at the text message until the words blurred. Enjoy the tree while you can. Accidents happen. Someone was threatening me, and it didn't take a detective to figure out who. The next morning, I checked the tree. It was still standing, but something felt off. I walked around the yard, scanning for footprints, tire tracks, anything. And there it was, fresh sawdust near the roots. Someone had been here. I called the sheriff, but without a camera or proof, there was nothing they could do. Keep an eye out, the deputy said. If you catch anyone in the act, call us right away. That night, I set up my old hunting camera, the kind that triggers with motion. I pointed it straight at the tree. If anyone came near it again, I'd have their face. 2 days later, I had my evidence, and my blood boiled. The footage showed a man in a dark hoodie, walking straight into my yard after midnight, carrying a can of something. He knelt at the base of the tree, poured the liquid around the roots, then walked away. I called the sheriff again. This time, they came out and collected the footage. Looks like herbicide, the deputy said grimly. He's trying to kill it from the roots. When the sun came up, I went door to door asking if anyone recognized the man. Nobody did, until I knocked on Mrs. Thompson's door 2 streets over. She gasped when she saw the still image. That's Linda's nephew, she whispered. He stayed with her last summer. Caused trouble with some kids at the pool. So Linda was still trying to take my tree, just not legally. That evening, I called an emergency neighborhood meeting at my house. If she's willing to do this to me, I told the group, she'll do it to anyone who stands in her way. We need to stop her for good. We decided to hire a lawyer, not just to protect my tree, but to file a civil complaint against Linda and the tree cutting company. The lawyer said we had a strong case, misuse of HOA funds, breach of fiduciary duty, and now criminal vandalism. Word spread fast. Soon, even people who had supported Linda before were turning against her. But she wasn't done fighting. 3 nights later, I woke up to flashing lights. Fire trucks lined the street. My neighbor pounded on my door. Your tree, she cried. It's on fire. I ran outside barefoot. Flames licked the base of the trunk, black smoke rising into the night sky. I grabbed my garden hose, spraying as hard as I could until the firemen took over. By some miracle, they put it out before the whole tree was lost, but half the bark was scorched, and I could smell the charred wood even from my porch. This was no accident, the fire chief said grimly. Smells like accelerant. The sheriff arrived soon after. This time, they didn't just take a report. They took samples. I spent the rest of the night sitting on my porch, shotgun across my lap. I wasn't going to let anyone touch that tree again. The next morning, a police cruiser pulled up. The deputy got out, smiling grimly. We got him, he said. They'd traced the accelerant purchase to a local hardware store. Security footage showed the same man in the hoodie, Linda's nephew. They arrested him that afternoon. But when I thought it was finally over, I got a letter in the mail. HOA notice of special assessment. They were fining me $5,000 for damages caused by unauthorized fire on common property. I laughed out loud, then felt the rage building. They were trying to make me pay for their crime. I called my lawyer. We're done playing nice, I said. It's time to take this to court. He smiled. Good. Because I just got the audit results back. You're not going to believe what we found. The audit showed over $60,000 in landscaping fees, paid to the same company in less than a year, most of it unauthorized, some of it double-billed. And guess whose name was on every approval form? Linda's. We set a court date. And I knew, when that day came, the entire neighborhood would be watching. The courthouse smelled of old wood and tension. Neighbors filled every bench, whispering to each other as Linda sat stiffly at the defense table, her lawyer whispering frantically in her ear. She looked smaller now, like the power had drained right out of her. I sat across the aisle, my lawyer beside me, a folder of evidence neatly stacked between us. This wasn't just about my tree anymore. This was about every neighbor who'd been bullied, fined, or silenced. When the judge entered, the room fell silent. Mr. Harris, The judge said, looking at me. "You may begin." My lawyer stood and began to speak. "Your Honor, this case is simple. The HOA president, Ms. Linda Brooks, authorized thousands of dollars in unnecessary tree removals, paid to a single contractor, with no competitive bidding process, a direct violation of HOA bylaws. She then attempted to have my client's tree cut down under false pretenses. And when that failed, her relative trespassed on his property, poisoned the tree, and eventually attempted to burn it down." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. "We have invoices, signatures, and security footage proving every claim," my lawyer continued. "And we will be seeking reimbursement of misused HOA funds, damages for the attempted destruction of my client's property, and a permanent injunction preventing further harassment." Linda's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, these accusations are exaggerated. My client acted in the best interest of the community." I couldn't stay silent any longer. I stood up. "Best interest?" I said, my voice steady but loud enough to carry. "You tried to erase my family's history for profit. You terrorized this neighborhood for years. This was never about safety, it was about money and control." The judge banged his gavel. "Mr. Harris, you'll have your turn." But the damage was done. The neighbors were glaring at Linda now, whispering to one another. One by one, witnesses took the stand. Mrs. Callahan, clutching a photograph of her magnolia tree, said in a trembling voice, "She told me my tree was diseased. She lied to me." The treasurer testified next, admitting he had been kept in the dark about the extra payments. "I never saw these invoices until Mr. Harris brought them forward," he said. Then came the sheriff, who confirmed the arrest of Linda's nephew and the forensic evidence that tied him to the fire. By the time it was over, Linda's lawyer was sweating. He whispered to her, then stood. "Your Honor, my client would like to offer a settlement." But the judge wasn't having it. "Ms. Brooks, based on the evidence presented, this court finds that you abused your position as HOA president, violated community trust, and engaged in fraudulent activity. You are hereby removed from your position, fined, and barred from serving on any HOA board in the state for a period of 10 years. The gavel came down with a sharp crack. The room erupted in cheers. Some neighbors even cried. I walked outside into the sunlight, feeling 10 pounds lighter. The following weekend, we held a neighborhood gathering under my oak tree. People brought food, drinks, lawn chairs. Kids played on the swing, just like I had when I was their age. The new HOA board, made up of neighbors who actually cared, announced that all unnecessary fines from the past year would be refunded. The tree cutting contract was canceled. And the first thing they voted on? Funding to treat and preserve every healthy tree left in the neighborhood. As the sun set, I put my hand on the trunk of the old oak. Its bark was scarred from the fire, but it still stood tall, defiant. My wife came to stand beside me. "You saved it," she said softly. "No," I said, looking at all the neighbors laughing and talking around us. "We saved it. Together." For the first time in months, I felt peace. The HOA had tried to cut down my 100-year-old tree. But instead, we cut down their corruption. And as I watched the branches sway gently in the evening breeze, I knew one thing for sure. This tree would outlive every single one of them.